by FBNQuest. This is going to be the best. Don't say I said, don't quote me, but this is going to be the best session. And today we will be discussing the basics of financial planning. And, we want to guide you in your journey to wealth. How are you going to be wealthy? I know 2020 has been, in Nigerian parlance, a basketball year, but today we're going to have conversations that hopefully point us in the direction of good financial planning and, a guide to generating and sustaining wealth. Now, I'll give you a brief background into Leading Conversations. What is it and why are you here? Leading Conversations with FBNQuest is a webinar series created to bring you markets, industry and consumer insights and analysis that are crucial for individual and corporate success. So what does that mean? If you're a person, you're going to learn how to invest, save, all the money information that you need. If you're a business, the same thing. If you're the two mixed together, all well and good. This is your one-stop destination to get all the information you need to make you more financially successful. The series usually features leading professionals of FBNQuest, as well as other industry experts with experience in corporate and private investment management, wealth preservation, financial advisory, and other areas of interest. We hope through this conversation, we hope to open up your mind to the amazing world of opportunities that exist in the world, and hopefully connect you with those opportunities. I'm talking too much, so I'm going to quickly pivot again to why we're here. This session will be run primarily by Anne Oragwu, and she's going to take us through key points on how to grow our wealth. A brief background into her amazing profile, because we can't read her complete bio. This is a power woman we have here today. Thank you, Anne, for joining us. And Oragwu is the head affluent at FBNQuest. And she consequently leads the sales teams responsible for business development, client acquisition, and client relationship management, both directly and via various partner channels. She possesses over 18 years of work experience and has worked in key positions across reputable financial institutions in Nigeria. Like I said, this is a heavyweight we have on the call, and we're so glad to have her here. Please note that there will be a Q&A session towards the end of this webinar. So, keep your answers. You'll probably be able to use the chat box, to put in your questions, and we will answer as many of them as we possibly can. So just keep them coming. But before then, let's listen, let's pay attention, let's come with open hearts and open ears to learn more about financial planning and wealth management. And with that, I'll be handing over to Anne Oragwu now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for that warm introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are calling in from or dialing in from. We really appreciate the fact that you've taken time to join us on a very interesting topic. It's something that I'm particularly excited about, financial planning. And as webinar title says, Financial Planning 101 is the basic introduction to everyone who wants their money to work for them, so to speak. Starting your journey into wealth is supposed to give you the basic tools that is required for you to be able to achieve your goals and basically live the best life that you can as an individual. If we go on to the next slide, we'll go quickly into the heart of the matter, so to speak. And so today we're going to be looking at a few key concepts. Understanding what financial planning is to begin with. Creating a financial plan. And we're also going to take you through the process of understanding what the benefits of this whole buzz about financial planning is about. And then hopefully after spending about an hour here, I think it will be crucial for us to agree on next steps to take us into the future in achieving, all the successes that we hope to gain from this presentation, from this webinar. Moving swiftly into what financial planning means. Basically, the definition we have here talks about activities that help you to structure your finances. And the word activity is extremely deliberate. It shows that managing your finances doesn't happen by chance or happenstance. It's something you have to be deliberate about. It's something that you have to give a lot of thought to. It's something that you need to make an effort towards. There are certain buzzwords that are associated with it, like budgeting, savings, investments, emergency funds, debts, and retirement planning. And in the subsequent slides, we'll go through all of this in detail. This is just a brief introduction. If we move on to the next slide, I'd be able to delve in a bit more. And so we felt that an interesting way to commence would be to sort of guide you through your life cycle and discuss the different financial concepts that are aligned with such stages. We have used the Maslow hierarchy of needs here because it's groups, your needs into various stages of your life. And so I'm hoping that everyone will be able to relate to one stage or the other as we go along. And so we'll start from the bottom of the pyramid, the last two boxes you see that says basic needs. If you look to the left of that, you'd see that it's speaking about income acquisition and preservation. So at this point, we're talking about the early stage of your life, of your career, or your business, depending on what it is that you do. At this point, you're really focused on how do I make money? How do I meet my needs? How do I sustain this income so that I can continue to meet my needs? And the concepts that we've said are important at this point, if you look over to the right, is balance. So you have to live for today. You need to eat. You need to transport yourself to wherever you need to safely, mind you. We need to take care of our phone bills, our loved ones, pay for our rent, the basics. And you need money to do this. You need finances. So at this point in time, you're thinking, okay, how do I balance this? I want to meet my needs, but I don't want to be at this stage forever. I don't want to live from paycheck to paycheck. I want to be able to grow. I want to grow in terms of my funds. I want to grow as an individual. And when I say grow, I mean things like, okay, for instance, FBNQuest, where I work, you could look to such an institution and say, okay, I want to start a banking career. But I mean, everyone I believe who's on this call has taken time out because they just don't want a mediocre life. They want to be the best. And so you're like, okay, I want to be the best at this. What do I need? I need to understand finance. So in addition to this course that I'm going on, I probably would need to do a bit more. So maybe I do a CFA. And so you have to be deliberate about how to grow your monies and then yourself as an individual so that your earning capacity grows along with you. Moving swiftly to the next stage, at this point, we're hoping that you stabilize in terms of balancing and you're looking at building wealth. The term wealth suggests that there's an abundance of your resources. So at this point, you're not just trying to live off, on the basic things. Now you're creating some sort of abundance that's going to be able to mobilize some other things or other people. And psychologically, you start to think of esteem. You start to think of belonging, wanting to add value, and that sort of thing. When you're at this stage of life, the sorts of concepts you think about, one is diversification of investments. So at this stage, you're like, I have a bit more money, and so I can do a bit more with it. I want my money to work for me more effectively, so I just don't want to leave it in some random, low earning investments or accounts, so to speak. So what do I want to do? Do I want to diversify into equity, wisely? And we'll go through the stages of doing this without hurting yourself. And so you start to look for ways to improve the way your money works for you. And one of the things, I'm sure you can see the picture of an anchor there, and you're wondering, we're not talking about sailing. Why do we have this here? Even in your finances, you need an anchor. And so while you're working hard, growing wealth, making good business decisions, good investment decisions, you need an anchor. You need to ensure that you have some sort of security so that you never drop back from level 5 to level 1. And so insurance for your assets, even for your health, medical insurance, all these things are critical at this stage in life. In fact, at every stage of your career, so that you don't have a case where, some medical condition depletes all you've worked for years. And so your goals are just, basically unreachable because of one incident. And so please, 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 while we work and why, a lot of people, I've heard people say, oh, but I've been paying my premiums and nothing has really happened. Let's say just pay those premiums for your peace of mind so that you have an anchor and ensure that you don't drop below the level that you've been able to climb towards, and you keep going forward and not backwards. Tax planning is also very essential. All around the world, tax is very important. Even locally here in Lagos, I know that businesses are very particular about the sorts of taxes that are charged, and you need to plan towards this as well. If you don't plan for the taxes, they come up as a surprise to your finances, and they could actually derail you from meeting your goals. And moving quickly to the last stage, the top stage, which is the self-actualization stage. This is more like when you've reached the prime of your career or your business is at the level that you had dreamt for it to be. And at this point, you're thinking of consolidating your wealth and even transfer. So you're thinking about things like planning for retirement. And mind you, the fact that I've put certain concepts in certain life stages doesn't mean that they are restricted. From day one in your career, you should start to plan, or in your business, plan towards retirement, because that's the best way to be able to retire peacefully and have the sort of, retirement that justifies all the work that you've been doing. And so things like philanthropy come up at this stage. Personally, I'm passionate about female education, educating the girl child. And I know that all of us are passionate about different things. And so when you think about, okay, so when I'm at my pinnacle and I want to give back to society, there's some areas that I need, to add value to. You need to research into these areas, identify ways you can help, identify the resources you require to do this, and build them into your plan so that, as you progress as an individual, you can help the community that helped you to get to where you are. Estate planning is also critical. So I'm sure we've all heard about wills and trusts. All these are very important. And you don't have to wait until you're at retirement stage to put these things in place. Put them in place early. I mean, we have living trusts where while you're working, you could, put in all your assets and ensure that certain percentages of those are paid into different objectives and goals that you want to, such that transitioning much later is easier and seamless. If we move on to the next slide, we'll go into some of these concepts in detail. So this is where we set our aspirational goals. And we would be sharing a little poll for a minute. Please, please, please indulge us and just fill it in, because I don't want this to be a one-way, conversation. I want to get feedback from everyone. So if you just take a minute and fill out the poll, I would really, really appreciate it. Okay, so I'd fill out mine as well so that we're all participating in this.
And I was just going to say there's no answer is the wrong answer. Just
absolutely.
Just fill it out as it's specific to you.
Absolutely. Okay, I see we have a leader at the moment. A lot of people in this webinar are interested in real estate, owning their property and estate empires. That's an interesting objective. I think this sort of suggests the fact that we want an anchor, we want something stable that we can hold on to. But the truth is, the essence of this poll is not really, to determine which is a good, like Francesca said, that you're entitled to whatever it is that you're passionate about. Even if, all you crave is to own a property in Milan, that is your passion and that's fine. But the essence of this is we're trying to establish a reason to get out of bed every day, right? When your alarm goes off and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm still tired. What makes you get out of bed and get on with it? It's these goals that you're working towards. And so this poll is giving you a chance to think for a second about the things that drive you. and the things that are critical for you to achieve, your objectives. Our leader here is property. I think the next highest is an education for yourself, for your wards, and then a robust retirement account. That's my favorite because I feel like we work so hard. We don't want to retire and start to beg for pennies, please. We want to retire and travel the world and have a good time. And the last is philanthropy. And philanthropy is important as all of them. Like I said, there's nothing as right or wrong. But what I think we should take away from this is our goals are supposed to drive us to manage our finances better, to earn more money in order to achieve them. And so what we've just gone through is establishing, if you're able to influence your future today and determine what your outcome would be, what are the things that you would put in place to ensure that happens? And all of us have sat down to think about it and we've selected these options. So what I say is, please hold on to this dream because it's what will drive you to achieve your financial goals and to be disciplined. If you need to take a photo of whatever it is that you want to, so for instance, for those who say they want property, go online, get a photo of choice property that you dream about and stick it to your bed. So when you wake up in the morning and you're like, when you look at it, you're like, okay, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to do something and I'm going to add value to my life or make it your screensaver. You just need to be passionate about what you do because that will drive you to achieve your finances. So let's move on quickly to the actual process of financial planning now that we've established our goals. The first stage of financial planning that we're going to talk about is goal setting. And that is, what the whole poll was about. And when you're setting this goal, you have to be specific. So for those of us who have said we want to own estates or property, you need to know for what purpose do I even want it? Is it to live in? Is it to earn rental income? Is it to continue to buy and resell? You have to know specifically because if your goal is big, it's more difficult to achieve it. So what are the specifics? And where do I want it? Like I said, do I want it in Banana Island? Do I want it in Ikorodu? Do I want it in New York? Where do I want it? You need to do all this research so that you have clear objectives, how long it would take you, how much money is required, what if you need a loan, so you can be prepared for what you want to achieve. So timelines, it must be measurable. What do I want? Just one property? Do I want whole estate? Do I want, what is it? What sort of real estate am I looking at? And then you have to classify your goals into the short, medium, and long term. Short term being within 1 year, less from next day, same day to 1 year. And so what are your short-term goals? You need your short-term goals to survive and get to the medium term. Short-term goals would be, I want to pay my rent, I need a roof over my head, I need to feed my family, pay school fees for myself or for my dependents, what are the things I need liquidity for regularly? And then what are your midterm goals? Things that you do in the next 3 years, for instance. And then what are your long-term goals? So towards 5, 7 years and beyond. I'll give a very basic example. And I'd use my sister, she's probably watching, so please forgive me. What she started off her business doing was selling as a third-party merchant. And so she didn't produce anything. She just wanted to sell in the short term because that was what she had the skills to do. In the medium term, however, she upskilled herself and learned the act of making bags, making shoes, and all of that. And so she moved from just selling other people's things to having her own brand and her own commodity. And in the long term, her goal is to go to major fashion centers all around the globe. And so that's the same way we have to think about our goals, because our goals have the day-to-day, the more near future, and the long-term objectives. And so we need to think about all these things in setting our plans. And we've given a very basic plan here just to guide us. And this is a short-term one. So we said, if I need to upskill myself and it will cost me 120,000 naira, this could be for an exam we want to take, this could be for learning a skill that we require. I need it in the next 1 year because by this time next year, I feel like, I'd be on top of this whole COVID situation and I'll be ready to go and acquire this skill. And so you have to have a clear goal like this. All right, I need 120,000 naira because that is what it costs to do this. I need it within this period because that is when I'll be ready to go on. And I need this skill so that it can help me achieve this. We have to be that clear. Let's move on to the next example. And this is just basically to drive home the point. I think, people remember things better when there's an example. And this is a young Nigerian lady called Morolake. You can look her up later because there's a lot of information on her on the internet. So this young lady in 2011 sat down and thought about what she wanted to be, what she wanted to do with her life. And she put out a Twitter saying in 2016, I will be 22. I would have graduated from a school that I haven't even identified yet, but I know I would have graduated. And I'll be going to the Olympics. And please, could we take the next few bullets so we see, the sort of drivers for Morolake? Thank you so much. And so in doing this sort of thing, first thing you have to do is be self-aware. There's no point in setting a goal that is totally disjointed from you. And so Morolake looked at herself and realized that, look, all through growing up, I've realized that I'm very good at athletics. And so my goal should be tied towards that. And so I'm going to work towards what's the optimum that I can be as an athlete. And to her, she felt it was going to the Olympics. And so she said, yes, I have a strength and I'm going to take it to, its optimum level. So you have to be self-aware. She also wanted to go to school because she realizes that as an athlete, your shelf life, so to speak, the number of years that you can be actively engaged or employed is only so long because it requires a lot of physical strength. And so she also wanted, to have an education to fall back on. And so it's very important to look for things that drive you when you're determining your goal so that, it aligns and it's more achievable and you're able to achieve a lot more than somebody who doesn't have a strength in that area. Or something that you can acquire is skill in, but you're passionate about. You need to be determined because, like I said, we have short, medium, and long-term goals. And for you to push on until you get to the long term, you have to be determined to continue to do that. We also require discipline in our finances and discipline as individuals. Because you're the one who is enabling these finances. And so if you're not disciplined, there's a tendency that you're not going to achieve what you're planning to do. We need to persevere. We're in a year where, at the beginning of 2020, everybody felt like this was going to be the greatest year ever. And then a pandemic comes, right? It's initially at the beginning of the year, it was like a problem in China. It wasn't really close to us, so to speak. But you see, all through this, people have persevered. You're here today, regardless of the fact that there's a pandemic. And that's the attitude we require. Regardless, we will do what we need to do. And lastly, you need to be passionate about your goal. And so in tweeting, what she wanted to do, she was holding herself accountable. That's what Morolake did. And so anyone who had seen this tweet and had run into her in the future would ask her, how close are you to achieving those goals that you put on? And it would encourage her, it would re-energize her. And so it's important to be passionate and show this passion to people because it helps you to sort of have a fan base of people who are pushing you on, urging you towards your goal. Now let's go on to the next slide. I think we've driven our point home. The next area we'll be discussing is budgeting. And a budget takes into consideration some key things. What's your income? What do I earn? What are your recurring expenses? Like I said, the feeding, the transportation, rent, all of that. And how much do I require to set aside to achieve my goal? You need to put all these into perspective. And we have an example here. And we're leveraging off the one we had mentioned before, where we had said you need 120,000 naira within a year, or dollars or pounds or yen, depending on where you are, to acquire a certain skill. And so you're saying 12 months, 120, that means that on a monthly basis, I have to put aside 10,000 naira or dollars or pounds or yen or whatever the equivalent is to you. And so you have to be that detailed in budgeting so you know precisely what you need. And when you're disciplined, the tendency and the good thing about finance is that it pays you back. Because if you invest these funds, you get a return on it. And then if you're lucky, you get some people, I mean, sometimes the festive season is around, you get gifts, you get monetary gifts. If you showed us all those in there, you end up with even more than you had set out to achieve. And then you can achieve more. Please let's go on to the next slide. The next, I think this is critical, which is why I'm pausing, because I want to emphasize the fact that it's important. I spoke about insurance. The whole idea is you need an anchor. And an emergency fund is as critical as insurance in the sense that you can be doing all the things right. You can be putting aside the money, 10,000 naira you need on a monthly basis and all of that. But there could be an emergency. Someone close in your family has a dire situation. And so you have to take away all that money you've been saving and investing and pour it into that. What does it do to you? It takes you further away from your goal. And so it's important for us to have an emergency fund in addition to our insurances and all, to ensure that we don't have a major setback that derails us from what we need to do. And because your emergency fund is an emergency, it's something you need immediately, you put it in a low risk sort of investment like the money market fund. And so we've put an example here of the one we have at FBNQuest, but we know that all around the world, wherever you are, there are money market funds that you can invest with. And the idea is that they are low risk. And so if you need to access them instantly, these funds tend to be very liquid. You can without any risk of having them being depleted. Okay, let's move on quickly to the next concept because we have a lot to talk about. Debt. Debt is not a bad thing. It has a lot of potential, but we have to use it wisely. My advice is you should only take loans for things that can add value back to you. And so, for instance, if I want to buy these beautiful Jimmy Choo shoes, I would not take a loan for that. I would save, I would wait for Black Friday and buy it at a discount. You take the loan for things that are going to earn. The only reason why I would buy, designer shoes with a loan is if those shoes are critical to my business. Maybe I'm going to learn some sort of skill from just looking at the way it was produced or something. And so loans can be strong enablers. There are ways to fund your goals. But when we take loans, one, we have to make sure that we're taking them in order to earn and not just to consume. And the second thing we have to think about is we have to have a repayment plan. So in that our budget that we have, there has to be a bit that is put aside for repaying our debts. And why do we need that? If you don't, repay your debts, obviously it will affect your credit rating. And it will, preclude you from taking loans at times that are more essential in the future. And secondly, your interest continues to accumulate. And the bigger it gets, the more, difficult it is to dig yourself out of that hole. We have quite a few people, that are struggling with debt now. So please, 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 no matter what stage you are at with your debt today, make sure you build it into your plan and make sure that you're wise about what you take loans for. Let's move on to the next topic, please. The next is taxes, and I mean, taxes are so real, right? Wherever you are, you practically can't run away from them. And so the idea behind this is that you have to plan towards your taxes. They are going to be there. If you're an income earner, you'd pay your tax. If you're a business person, I mean, a lot of business people in Lagos, go on about, all the taxing that they get to do. But if you plan towards it effectively enough, you'd be able to accommodate it and still meet your goal. Okay, please let's go on to the next slide. And so at this point, we're talking about diversifying your portfolio. If you remember, the pyramid that we had looked at previously, I'd spoken about diversification. So we're just going to go into a bit more detail about this. One key thing you have to bear at the back of your mind when you're diversifying is the fact that you have short, medium, and long-term goals. I think we're all experts in this already. We've discussed it. But the idea behind diversification is the fact that you need to realize that short-term goals have to be matched with certain sorts of investments, which are low risk. Because if I need to pay my rent next month, I'm not going to take that money and put it in equity. In the short term, I could lose half of that value in equity. And so I'm not going to put the monies I need within, from today to the next 1 year in there. I'm going to put them in low risk sort of investment. And we have an example here, the money market fund, which we have globally, and we obviously have in FBNQuest as well. And I'll just take you through the features of ours. Basically, they help to preserve your capital, which is why you're putting your short-term goals funds in there. And in FBNQuest, you can start with as little as 5,000 Naira to invest. I mean, 5,000 Naira. Before COVID, that was just like, the amount it would take you to go to the cinema, pay for your ticket, buy popcorn and a drink. So I don't think it's too much for inspired people like I know are on this webinar to take that money and put it aside for achieving their goals. These amazing goals, that we're so passionate about. And a good thing about the money market funds is that they're extremely flexible. So you can add on funds and take out even just portions of them as you like. For the medium term goals, you can invest in things that have a bit more volatility because, the way the financial markets work is that they go in cycles. So the prices may drop, but they would go up again at some point. So if you're staying in the market for a while, you would ride on those cycles and you get to the stages where they are up again. And in the process, you're earning dividends and returns. So overall, you should be in a much better position by the time you get to, you need to use those funds for your medium-term goals. And there we have a couple of investments, the Halal Fund, we have the Eurobond Fund, because we also have some commitments in other currencies. So for instance, if your objective is to send, your children to Harvard, for instance, it's just a random example, you're going to be paying the school fees in dollars. So why invest in Naira for those sorts of things? It's important, to match your currencies with the goal so that, at the end of the day, currency exchange risk doesn't erode all the work you've been doing. And so we have all those solutions available to you. And then for the long term, you can then take a lot more risk. That is where you can dive into the equity market because, the equity market as well goes in a cycle. And if you're there for the long term, by the time you get your capital gains, you get your dividends, you're in a much better position. And as FBNQuest, we have products that can take you there, that can help you to achieve these objectives. If you don't want to bother yourself too much about, what do I buy? What do I sell? Not everybody is savvy in that space. And there's no point, taking additional risk. It's already a risky type of investment. So the best thing to do is to buy into a fund where you have experts who day in, day out monitor the markets and are able to help you to get the best out of this opportunity. Please let's move on to the next slide. And so I know this is 101, and so we're not going to go too in-depth into this, but I thought, when I talk about risk and return, I should give you some sorts of illustration as to what this means. So at the bottom of this scale, you have cash in bank. So that's like the lowest risk, right? You're not investing it in anything with any volatility. You've put it in the safest place. And this is where people put funds that they need, urgently in the short term, cash in bank, savings investments, money market funds, low risk type things. Then you start to climb up the risk ladder. You get to real estate, you get to bonds, you get to equity, and then venture capitalists and all these new investment opportunities. I hear a lot of people today talking about these new businesses. Some groups of people want to invest in agriculture and they're giving me humongous returns and I want to just take out all my money and put them there. What I'd say is, if you're happy to take on risk, that's fine, but don't take your short-term funds and put in there. Because if you lose money in the short term, you might be thrown out of your house because you just can't pay your rent, right? And so you have to be smart about this. And when you're going into things at the top of the risk curve, you put in the funds that you're not going to have a heart attack, literally, if you lose a significant portion. And I think the slide basically is just talking about the fact that diversification provides an opportunity to match your various goals with suitable investments. So like I said, short-term, low risk, long-term, higher risk, but ensure you diversify just to make sure that, everything, your short, your medium, and your long-term goals, are working for you. I just give you a quick example of something as I've done in terms of diversifying, and this is within this period. And so, we would be able to relate to it, hopefully. At about March, April, when we were all scampering around to buy sanitizers and face masks and all of that. I did all of that because, I said you have to survive in the short term, right? But I also thought about the fact that, look, everybody's struggling with all this medical-based purchases. Nobody is really going to be paying attention to the stock market. And so I took a peek in and I saw a stock that I'd been trying to buy for a while, Nestle. And to my surprise, the stock that had been always over 1,000 naira was selling for 765 naira. And I quickly called my brokers at FBNQuest and said, please buy, 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 buy. I liquidated everything that I could and I bought in. And as at the last time I checked, the price had gone up to about 1,400. I've practically made 100%, more or less, in 8 months, April to November. So when you talk about diversification, it gives you an opportunity to earn seriously without risking. I didn't put all of my money. I put the money that I knew that if anything happened, I wasn't going to have a heart attack. But see what has happened. I practically doubled my money. So it's important for you to diversify. We work really hard. At this point in time, we could be doing anything, relaxing, but we are here listening to this webinar because we want to improve on ourselves. And so if we work hard, we have to make sure that our money works hard for us. And so retirement, I've spoken about retirement. So moving on to the retirement slide, the only thing I'd add is please don't ever think that you're too young, to start to work towards retirement. Because the earlier you start to put monies aside, the more you'd have to retire with. Please go to the next slide. And so insurance, okay, I've already spoken about insurance, so I won't spend too much time on this, but I'll just emphasize the fact that in addition to having your plain vanilla insurances, they're actually investment products that have insurances built in. For instance, the FBN Education Endowment Fund plan that we have at FBNQuest, it allows you to invest for your children's education and also has trust and insurance built in. So if you don't want to bother yourself too much about going through too much details, you could actually have like a package deal to help you to achieve your goals. I think the next slide would be about the last slide. Yes. Okay, so this is our summary. I've been talking for a while. And so, I just want to recap so that we leave here with a few points, okay? And so what does a financial plan help you to do? It helps you to achieve your goals personally and financially, because the finance really is just an enabler for whatever it is that you're passionate about. It helps you to plan towards retirement so you don't work so hard and at the end of the day, you have nothing to fall back on. It helps you to show up your savings and your investment portfolio and also to establish your net worth. Net worth is what do I own minus what do I owe? So you have a clear understanding of what you're worth. And most importantly, or no, just as importantly, it gives you an emergency fund so that you don't drop down from making a lot of progress, to entry level. And going on to our next steps, what I'd say is, please, you've taken about 40 minutes or so, just listening to this session. I don't want us to step out of here, without having a plan. So please write down a few things, the goals you've identified, what it would take in terms of the tenure and the resources to achieve them so that you can start to work towards them. Then do your research, go online, but we know that on the internet, you have good and bad information. So please don't rely 100% on investment information online. Speak to a financial advisor. We've published the names of a few astute financial advisors that you can speak to. And so at this point, I'll hand back over to Francesca. But please, 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 please have an action plan and make sure that this 40 minutes you spent ends up working in making you move closer to that amazing goal of yours. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very, very much, Anne. This was an incredible session, if I do say so myself. I was taking notes. I really loved your, the Nestle example. Like my eyes popped out and I was just like, oh my God, I did like this. I was like ×2. So that was, it was very interesting to see that. I love the part about setting measurable, timely goals, because that's something that I think a lot of us can learn from. I also love the fact that you harped on starting to plan for retirement early, which is like from day one. I think that most of us always feel like there's this time that we can, okay, maybe when I'm 60, I'll start planning. But I like the fact that you reminded us to start early, and just a lot of beautiful things about this presentation. We have a ton of questions, which I'm going to jump straight to. So for those on the call, we've been asking you to send in your questions all week, and we've gotten a ton of questions from our community and from all of you as well on the call. So I'm going to take some of the questions here. So the first one is, in which industry, somebody's asking, what industry should they invest or buy shares in? I mean, you gave the example of Nestle. Are there any other particular industries that are kind of like hot cake, or what would be your thoughts around that?
Okay. And so investing, first thing I'd like to emphasize is investing in shares is really buying a piece of a company. And so even though we have all these financial instruments that make it seem a bit, disconnected, the truth is you are buying a piece of a company. So when you think about what shares you're going to buy, think, if I had enough resources to buy a bit of a company, which company would I want to buy into? Why my focus was on Nestle is because I know Nestle produces a lot of products in the food industry, food and beverages, and people have to eat, right? And so for me, I thought that's the sort of sector I'd like to put my money in. I'd like to put my money in, a sector that has goods that people would always want. But everybody has their preferences. I mean, with COVID, a lot of things have gone online. And so we have a lot of people who have looked at the fact that they want to invest in tech stock. We have people investing in Zoom, there are lots of opportunities that come around. So I'd say it's peculiar to you. Look at what sectors you'd like to invest in as an individual, and then look at the risk involved. If you can balance those two, you'd be able to choose what industries are suitable for you.
Thank you, Anne. So I'm going to lump three questions together because they're all kind of like
similar. Okay.
So people are trying to find out what sort of investment, and I think you've touched on this, but I'll still ask the question. What sort of investments can one make with little funds? So I have 20K, I have 50K, I have 100K. What sort of investments can I put those, that fund into? What kind of instruments or, investments can I make with those, like a small fund, a small amount?
Okay, so there are a ton of investments. I'll start with the financial ones because this is about financial planning. And so I'd say mutual funds is a good place to start because we have mutual funds that invest in money market instruments, low risk. We have mutual funds that invest in bonds, which is the sort of medium risk. We have mutual funds that invest in equity. And they start with as little as 5,000 Naira. And so, it's easy for you. In fact, some as low as even 1,000 Naira. And, there are mutual funds across currencies and all. So I suspect that no matter what it is you require, you can meet, and no matter how little you have, you can meet your investment objective using a mutual fund. And benefits of this is that you have experts who are day in, day out monitoring the markets and getting the best for you. But that being said, with the whole world sort of going online, there are lots of other alternatives you had. I spoke about my sister who wasn't even producing anything and was just, going online and publicizing other people's goods and making a spread of it. So right now, there's so many opportunities for you that you can do with a small capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody wants to know, how do I turn my passion into streams of income? So for example, I don't know, I'm a hairstylist or I'm a farmer. How do I turn that? And I think that's a question that we get a lot from the community because you have people who are doing different things. So how does that translate to, money, really?
Money. And so this is a fantastic time to ask that question Because one very easy example I will give you is YouTube. So during the lockdown, I was stuck with a 6-year-old who had thick, kinky hair, and I had no idea of what to do with it. And so I started to watch all these YouTube videos of people who were good in managing natural hair. So no matter what it is you're passionate about, you can go onto YouTube and talk to people about it. And as long as you're passionate, why we went about goal setting was because we want you to pursue things that you're passionate about. People can tell when you're passionate, and you'd have a lot of followers. And what happens when you have a lot of followers? People want to advertise on your platform, and next thing, you're making a lot of money. So this is a good time, for people to ask that question, whatever it is. I've seen YouTubers talking about how to clean houses. I've seen people, all sorts of topics that you're interested in, you can, promote online. And so this is a good time to want to drive and monetize your passion. Just, talk to people about the best way to go about it. Like I said, we've put the names of some financial advisors. Talk to people who are already savvy business. Talk to people who are already established in those industries, YouTubers that you might know. And I think there's nothing really that you can be passionate about that you can drive today or monetize. Thank you.
So before we go to the next question, just a reminder, now projected on the screen are numbers for financial advisors that you can contact. So if you're shy or you're like, okay, this is too private or this is too personal, or I want my mom to call them, or I want my brother to call them, the numbers are on the screen. And you can also email to invest@fbnquestmb.com. I'll repeat that again, invest@fbnquestmb.com. So send your questions through, and somebody will be at the other end to give you a response. So I'll move on to the next question. Now, people are asking, and this has come from several people.
Yeah.
How do I plan, set, and achieve medium-term goals? So what's the process? So a lot of us are kind of stuck on the short term because that's like easy, but like how do we move to something that is more advanced? And what does that process look like?
Okay. So being stuck in the short term is a fantastic place to be because you already are heading, in the direction of what you want. I mean, the goal setting exercise we went through today has ensured that everybody on this webinar has taken a moment to think about what they're passionate about. And so look at what you're passionate about and see, what the tenors are for moving from good to great. And so if, for instance, right now you're a caterer, you're just baking cakes and selling to people who live around you in your neighborhood, you could want to, I have a friend who started off as a caterer and then she had a medium term, she thought, I don't want to be stuck here. What is the next stage? Go online, check, what are other caterers doing? What are the best of caterers doing? Look at what the next level looks like. And then identify how you can move there. Luckily, there's so much information online to guide you. There's so much inspiration for you to see. And then start to get details. Okay, I want to take it from this level to the next. Do I need to go for certain culinary courses, for instance? And then you start to set your plan. If I can do this for the next 2 years, this is how I'd get to the next stage. And of course, we've spoken about budgeting. Most of the plans you have will include monies, right? And so you then start to put something aside and make sure that you don't spend all of your money today in the short term just because it's Black Friday, buying things that you don't really need. You have to be disciplined about it. And as long as you focus on your goal, look at moving it to the next level, and you're disciplined about your expenses today, you'd be very comfortable in moving to the medium term and even the long term subsequent.
Amazing. Thank you for shedding light on that. And somebody wants to know, should a young person be bothered about pensions?
Absolutely. Retirement is something that I love to think about because I just imagine myself not having to have an alarm wake me up in the morning. And so to me, I think if you want to really have a good retirement, and retirement doesn't mean that you're not going to do anything. It could be a time where you just pursue your dreams day in, day out, right? And if you want to have a very good retirement, you need to start now because the principle of compounding when you earn interest and you reinvest it and you continue to earn interest on the interest you've earned, it grows your money at a much greater level, than trying to make the money when you're close to retirement. And so even if you have a little amount and you put it into the financial system for many years, it continues to grow. You'd be shocked at how much you're able to put aside when you're going to retire. And so please, I'm happy that you're asking this question. It means that you're thinking about it. It's very important. It is critical that you start to work towards that right now.
Great. Another interesting question that we have here says, can you recommend high return investments for a low income earner?
Okay. So as we have learned today, high returns come with high risk, right? And high potential returns, I'd say. And because I've spoken about mutual funds, I just link this back there. You might not have as much money as you want to invest in high risk investments like equity and all that would give you over time very, very decent returns. And so a good place to start if you have a little money is using a mutual fund. You have access to what millionaires and billionaires are investing in, because it doesn't matter how much you put in a mutual fund, you get the same percentage return, across board. And so you're able to access all these things, even with your little funds, and make very decent money. And at a time like this, where treasury bills and savings accounts are trending towards zero, this is a very good time to start to diversify into the mutual funds that expose you to a bit of bonds, a bit of equity, and all of that, so you can earn decent returns.
Thank you. So I have just two more questions because we know we want to be respectful of time. So one question is, can you shed light on the FBN Balance Fund? What is that, and how can people sign up or benefit from it?
Okay, fantastic. Okay, and so the FBN Balance Fund, as the name depicts, is a balanced fund. It has a bit of the low risk, the money market. It has a bit of the medium risk, the bonds, and a bit of the high risk equity. It's a fantastic platform for people who want to venture into equity, because they're like, nothing is happening, at the low risk space right now, especially in 2020. Nothing is happening, but I'm not comfortable enough with putting my money in a pure equity type investment. It's a good way for you to start. So it's balanced. It has a bit of low, medium, and high risk in it. And so you're able to start to enjoy the benefits without sort of like getting your feet wet, so to speak. The way to subscribe to it, please call any of the people whose names are there, or send an email to invest, or go to our website. The forms are there. We know that, we're stuck at home. They're all editable. You can fill them in, attach your signature, very easy, plain vanilla, and you're an investor. You could also use our app. Thank you.
Great. So we're seeing that we have a lot of questions, but we're almost out of time. So please send an email with your very specific questions to invest@fbnquestmb.com, and we promise you that you will get a response. So the final question for you, Anne, is you spoke about your Nestle, purchasing Nestle, which was a great example, yeah. But you're familiar with the market, so you know where to check and you know what to do. How does someone who is a newbie cultivate that habit? Like, where do we look? Is there some sort of, I would like to say magic, is there some sort of education that, we need to put ourselves through? How do we know what to look out for and how to benefit from those opportunities when they arise?
Okay, so I'll go back to the example that I gave about your buying equity is like buying into a piece of a company. And so even if you just go onto Google and type in Nestle, you would see things about their financial returns. They did this. These are the plans that they are trying to do. There's so much information about them, good and bad. And so it's at that point, you can start to get a picture of what sort of company is this? Do they sound like they have a lot of, because the company itself has to have short, medium, and long-term goals for you to align with them. You don't want a short-term focused company, that will crash in the long term. So when you start to see the sorts of things their management are talking about, and all, you sort of get a feeler as to what sort of company it is. Then, like I said, the industry as well helps you. So sometimes I have a bias towards certain things like food and beverages, the well-run ones. So I also it's just not everyone that I look at. You go online and you see which ones are they saying positive things about, which ones are they saying negative things about. But in addition to that, I'd say don't take all the junk you see online, hook, line, and sinker. Always, always also talk to a financial advisor. And an easy way to start, if you don't even want to start to do this research, is just to buy a mutual fund, right? You want to invest in equity, buy a mutual fund that invests in equity. And you have the experts who are astute and know what to invest in, managing your funds for you while, you just continue to read the material. Because if you are investing in a fund, they would send you material, understanding, oh, these are the stocks that made my investment go up and down. And over time, you then start to get confident enough to go out on your own.
What an amazing, powerful session. I feel like clapping. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you to everyone who joined. This was a thoroughly, insightful and educating webinar. Thank you to everyone who has joined, the Leading Conversations with FBNQuest. We're so glad that you joined, and we hope that you found this informative. We hope that you took away some information that sets you on the path towards, wealth, income generation, and, astute financial planning. If you have additional questions, which I'm sure you do, please send an email to invest@fbnquestmb.com or webinars@fbnquest.com, or contact the numbers projected on the screen. There are going to be several more topics like this on financial planning, investment, money, wealth generation. So you need to follow FBNQuest across all platforms on social media. They are the same name, @FBNQuest on Twitter, IG, LinkedIn, so you don't miss out. Remember that if you have any immediate questions, please send an email. We want your questions. Trouble us with your questions. We want to hear from you. We want to put you on the path towards wealth generation. So send an email to webinars@FBNQuest, and we'll be happy, to take those questions and guide you towards your goal. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Anne. Thank you to all the people who made this possible. Thank you to FBNQuest. Thank you to you, the lovely and wonderful attendees. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your questions. And we hope to see you around on another leading